Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast. And if you've been listening, we are over 70 episodes now talking to business leaders in Asia. And today it's my pleasure to have Teochew Nang with us and all the way from Ho Chi Minh City. And just a quick introduction. Actually, if you go on to YouTube, you can search for Denise Truong. And how I found her was her TEDx talk, Why Emotional Awareness to Solve Conflicts. And it's a very insightful TEDx speech. So a bit of introduction about her as well. So we got connected on LinkedIn. So Denise is the founder of TYDE Consulting and executive coach and first trainer in Vietnam to have this process communication model, PCM. And after a career in supply chain management, she shifted her passion assisting individuals to develop. She has honed her skills in change management, focusing on human development. And Denise has trained various teams in communication, leadership, and management skills. And with her programs always being learner-centric and organizations-oriented, beyond her coaching work, we were talking about her heritage today. She is the partner of TheQi, co-founder of Young and Professional Saigon, co-representative of Trash Hero HCM, a speaker, of course, as we mentioned, and a positive mindset. And she is amazing. I just spoke to her today. Denise, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for the invite. I'm very happy to be invited onto the Crouching Tiger podcast.
Yes, the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast.
Yes.
So my first question to all my guests is, what is your favorite Kung Fu movie?
It's Ip Man.
Ip Man, yes. Ip Man,
Yes.
if for the listeners, they have heard Ip Man many times. So many of our guests actually say that Ip Man it is their favorite movie because like Ip Man, of course, the first one was the best one, and then the second one was not bad, and then afterwards it's the third one. So a lot of stories about Ip Man is the sort of one of the Sifu's, or we call the master of Bruce Lee. How he claims to fame. Bruce Lee was part of his fighting dojo back in Hong Kong. And Ip Man, how I relate to Ip Man is I'm actually Hokkien. My mom is actually Hokkien, and my grandmother actually came from Wing Chun, which is where Ip Man is from. And I was talking to Denise today, and when I looked through and was doing research for this podcast, I saw that one of the skills on LinkedIn, and not many people put this as a skill on LinkedIn, is that Denise put that she speaks Chao Zhou Hua, which is in Teochew. All right, so Denise, can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So I'm not totally fluent in Chaozhouhua. However, I'm a proud Chaozhouren. So in other words, it's also Kakinang or Teochewnang. And it's from a small region in China. And we are a very small community, but that is migrants. Like historically, it's quite a lot of migrants that went from China to Southeast Asia. And then because of the wartime, they spread around the world and they built Chinatowns around the world. One of the biggest Chinatown actually is in the world is actually in Ho Chi Minh City. It's called Cholan, and it's spread over 2 districts. But coming back to my story, it's been 3 generations that we are born in different countries. I'm born in France. My parents are born in Cambodia, and my grandparents are born in Chaozhou. So we are 100% Chaozhouren, and I've never identified any single minute of my life as a Cambodian, though my parents were born in Cambodia, which is very interesting. However, today I consider my friends as French with multicultural background. It's been now 8 years that I've been living in Ho Chi Minh City. And before that, I was living in for 3 years in Shanghai. And I always thought that going to China would help me to connect with my roots, because all my life, my parents said to me that I was Chinese. But actually going to Shanghai, which is thousands of kilometers from Chaozhou, actually, I felt so much difference. And so I did not feel super connected to Shanghainese and Chinese. So I was like, oh, I'm a little bit disappointed, but let's move on and let's find some other work opportunities. And I found this work opportunity in Vietnam. And working and living in Vietnam, I was like, oh, I felt much more connected to these people, even though I'm not Vietnamese. But there's this kind of, I don't know, shared past that really connects us together. And yeah, so that's how I ended up here.
Thank you for sharing that, Denise. It's like a story of three countries, and my grandmother, my maternal grandmother is Teochew, and I know I can listen and 100% understand Teochew, but I don't speak it, but 100% because I used to listen to my late grandmother talk on the phone, and I could understand when she talks to people in Teochew.
Where is she from in Teochew? Is she from TYDE or Swatao?
Yes, Sotao. A lot of so in Malaysia, a lot of Teochew people, I was just telling Denise, have communities near the sea. So a lot of fishing businesses or sea-based businesses. So and most of them are from Swatao. Most of them are from Swatao. And I think maybe let me check. You speak Teochew, right? So one of the things that my grandmother says. So I will say I'm not very good Teochew. I'm a bit mixed Hokkien. But one of the things they say that I love to quote is she is a very picky eater. So she cooks excellent Teochew food. And in Malaysia, you will find very good Teochew porridge all around. So we have Teochew here is very famous for their food. You will have the what is it called? The one with the duck noodles. I forgot what's the name. That and yeah, the one with the duck insides. I forgot what's the name already. But anyway, you know what I
I
mean.
don't
You know what.
I don't know anything about Chow Chow food because I've not been brought. Actually, it's a very multicultural background. So, but from my
Yeah. You probably
childhood,
know French.
I was not exposed to a lot of Teochew food. Actually, I was more exposed to Vietnamese food rather
Yeah.
than Teochew food. Yes.
Yeah. And she said this is my favorite quote from her. She said "Be hao ko," and I'm not sure if it means the same thing to you, but basically that means cannot swallow. That means the food is so bad.
I can. Yeah.
I'm not sure how you say it, but I probably didn't do a good pronunciation. But it means the food is really bad. I cannot even swallow it. It's like the next level. It's not tasty. It's not I
Yeah.
don't like it. It is I cannot swallow it. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if you know the same saying as well. She said 北好口
I,
means
my
it's
parents never told me this is disgusting. Yeah, they never told me that. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah. Cool, Dennis. All right. So let's get into business today. So let's talk about emotional awareness. So maybe give us a summary. So I will highly encourage my listeners to go and watch your TEDx speech in TEDx Dachau. All right. So can you tell us a bit about that TEDx speech? You had a lot of stories with your mother and your growth as well in terms of emotional awareness. So can you tell us a summary of that TEDx speech?
Yeah. So coming back from a multicultural background, but in France, from a very young age, I had to adapt to different cultures. So in France, we are very expressive and very emotional, and whenever there is something, there's a problem, we blame. But with my Chinese background, the younger people have to just shut their mouth, follow the rules from the elders, and just be a good daughter, provide for the family, always smile, never say no, and all these kind of very fixed and traditional rules. And so it created, throughout my life, it created a lot of imbalance between the two cultures. I love my Taocho and my Chinese heritage, but also living in a French environment, I had also to adapt on how to expressing myself, how to think for myself, right? And so up until when I was 28, I was functioning on trying to adapt to different environments as much as I could. But then in 2018, I had a panic attack. And that's where I realized that, oh, actually, I have also to care about myself. and that I have to increase that emotional awareness because there are so many impulses. I had impulse of crushing my mother's head against a wall, which is very violent, and which is totally different from the respect that I have. But it was two different emotions that were very strong. The being super violent with her, and at the same time respecting her and loving her with all my heart. And with emotional awareness, I managed to find balance. Now we have a very constructive and empowering relationship, but it was a very hard process and a very painful process because there were so many past experiences that she did not understand. Because as my grandparents who arrived in France, they didn't know anything about education. The only thing that they care about is, oh, you are going to high school, which is much more education than I've ever had. You're going to graduate to college. This is this is great because it's much more, even more education that I've ever had. And so they didn't realize that so many of their behaviors and so many of their words could be very hurtful. And throughout the years, like it's been like now 7 years that I've been working on this relationship with my mom, where I went from a painful experience and painful communication to a more honest and constructive communication, where I respect her boundaries, I respect her emotions and her thoughts, and she respects my emotions, my thoughts, and my needs. But it was a very complicated process, but a long process. But at the end, I'm so grateful for the relationship that I have with her today, and yeah, it's very empowering.
Wow, such a great story. And yeah, I understand the challenge. I'm from a similar Chinese background, and I went to Chinese primary school, which is the worst thing. And we are taught to just follow orders, fit in, and just to follow and be exactly the same. So
Exactly.
it is a very uniform society. So
Exactly, and it's kind of the same in across Asia. And the thing is that the Southeast Asian market, I'm going to focus on the Southeast Asian market, is attracting a lot of foreign direct investment. So a lot of international companies are targeting the region to develop their brand or to outsource labor force, right? But the thing is that it's a great labor force who is mostly young, skillful. However, sometimes they are not reaching international standards. And so that's where there's a gap, right? Because international companies need people who are proactive, who take initiatives, who share their ideas and opinion openly, who really are participating in meetings or asking just questions, right? But the educational system here in Asia is building followers, not individualistic people, and it doesn't bring up the uniqueness within that we all have as human, right? And so that's where I come in to fill in the gap and to upskill the local labor force, the local managers, to be able to express themselves, unleash their potential, and really understand that, okay, that's what is happening in Vietnam or in Malaysia or in Indonesia or Singapore. But actually there's a bigger playground, which is the world, and you could reach so much by just adopting a positive communication, on voicing your mind, on taking initiatives, and to show that those international companies can trust you and trust in your capacity and reliability. I truly believe that there's a lot of trainers or thought leaders who are more into you either match international standards or you are tradition. And I believe that there is a middle ground in between where you can respect yourself as an individual, but also respect your elders. and your heritage and the harmony of your family. But it takes a lot of effort. The only thing is that it takes time, effort, patience to find the middle ground between the two.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing on what you do in TYDE Consulting. I can imagine, yes, like you said, foreign direct investment is, especially this year, looking to Southeast Asia, especially Vietnam and Malaysia. These are the two favorite countries, especially
Yes,
Vietnam, that they like to come. And
exactly.
yeah, all these American companies or European companies, they're like, oh yeah, we have to find a way to work with
Yeah,
Southeast Asia.
this year, Lego, for example, has invested $1 billion in building the manufacturing plant outside of Ho Chi Minh City outskirts. So it's a very attractive city and country for sure. And this is because of the labor force, as I mentioned, who is young and skillful. But also because there is this China plus one strategy since COVID, where companies are diversifying their investments and trying to find other ways to make sure that their supply chain is maintained.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's 100% correct. You're so informed about this. In Malaysia, we are seeing a lot of foreign investment coming in as well. So yeah, so let me ask you a question on. Thank you so much for sharing, and that is very wonderful. Bridging the gap between the Asian culture and the Western working culture as well. And maybe my question to you is, you named your TEDx talk emotional awareness, and while doing research for this, there are more people calling it. A lot of people call it emotional intelligence, right? But you chose the word emotional awareness. Maybe can you tell us what is emotional awareness?
So emotional awareness is part of emotional intelligence. In emotional intelligence, you have four pillars: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and social management. Emotional awareness comes into the self-awareness. And so emotional awareness is basically observing your thoughts, your emotions, without any judgment or interpretation, just a simple observation, and having regular check-ins on yourself and asking yourself, how do I feel right now? This is simple. And putting words on the emotions that you feel, and that's it. It's a place of honesty with yourself. It's a place where you don't hide behind mental construct, like societal construct of, oh, I need to be perfect. I need to show that I'm strong and that as a manager, you can count on me, that I am reliable. But actually, nobody is perfect. Nobody is strong. No one, like literally no one. It's not a constant, right? There, you can be strong at some point in time. You can be perfect at some point in time, but you can't be perfect all the time. And so being honest with yourself really help on keeping the balance of what is happening within you. And in a hyper-connected world where we are always on our screen, on our job, on hustling here and there, thinking what is the best way to make money, chasing for our next objectives, sometimes we end up doing very simple tasks in autopilot. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. And the thing is that being on autopilot sometimes can be useful, but other times it's also influence our decision-making process. We say yes, why? I don't know. You see? So being being emotionally aware of how you feel really takes you back to the present moment. And it also helps on reducing your stress, reducing your anxiety, helping you to make better decisions, understand people also, also knowing when to step back, when to self-care, when to say, okay, I just need some space right now. So I'm gonna share my boundaries to you and say, hey, right now I feel tired. So can we just like have a 5 minutes break and then I'll come back better. It's just, it takes 5 minutes is nothing, right? 5 minutes is it could be only 1 or 2 minutes, right? But it's so powerful, and it can shift the whole meeting or conversation just by having this emotional awareness, because you are connected with yourself, you're honest with yourself, and you know how to voice your mind in an honest and authentic way.
That is so powerful. And especially we were just talking about Asia, and this podcast is about Asia anyway. The extreme that we know in Asia is the Japanese salaryman. And because Japanese culture is also like a lot of Japanese companies here. So the Japanese salaryman is the person that is going to work maybe in a company for many years, very loyal servant to the company, and does not have any emotions. Like a lot of my uncles who work in Japanese companies are like these. So they just hide their emotions. I'm consistent. I'm reliable. I go to work. So it's exactly like what you said. So that 5 minute break is so powerful.
It
Uh,
is. And coming back to your Japanese example, like Japan is one of the countries that have the most special and weird tendency, right? um, like when you see, and today the birth rate is so low. They have a big problem with that because people don't want to engage in relationships. They don't want to open themselves, and because they don't know how. And so that creates a very big societal issue for the coming years. It has a lot of impact. All this pressure that they have on their shoulders is actually also impacting the society, because right now, like in terms of a population, the population is aging, and there's not enough younger population to replace them in the workforce. So it's a very big problem.
Yeah, it is, and I can imagine that. So that 5 minute break is something very powerful, and I reflecting on my corporate career, I wish I could have done it, and it is not something that it is practiced, especially in Asian workplaces. So any other examples on how emotional awareness could work in the workplace, besides that 5 minute break?
Mm, I think another example, for example, yesterday I was talking to one of the senior manager of an international company, and she's a foreigner. The country manager is Vietnamese, and it's the time where there's a budget time and the plans for 2024 that are this is the presentations time, right, for a lot of managers. And basically, the country manager said after the presentation of one person who delivered about her plans on the region, the country manager said, "This is shit. I am so bored. This is not okay." And and he said that in front of 20 people, which is very, very violent and very surprising for a country manager to be so brutal, blunt, and violent in his words, right? And in this case, what I would recommend to this person who just gave the presentation and made her best to deliver a good presentation to show her plans for the future, I would stop and say, all right, it seems that you are upset. I feel disrespected, and I need honesty, but also respect and support from the management team. Would you be willing to share how I could improve in another way than a violent way? Like making requests and being emotional aware in this moment can be very crucial, where you can shift conversations where you receive a very brutal and violent feedback, and just say, okay, I'm gonna take the strategy of being nonviolent and shift the conversation and say, okay, I get your feedback, and that's what I give you. I've received your feedback. This is what I give you, and I'm giving you compassion and honesty and authenticity. What do you give me now? Do you still give me violence? It's like in Ip Man, right?
Yeah.
In Ip Man, basically, it's giving you violence, and Ip Man is using this energy to beautiful, is using this energy to like to divert it and counter it to the opponent. This is exactly what I love to give. Giving tools of communication to local teams to say, okay, you don't have to be the victim of the violence of older people, of more senior people, because you are a person also, and you have needs, you have emotions, you have thoughts, and it's okay to express them. But there are different ways, right? So yeah.
That is amazing, Denise. That is amazing. I love that point about the Ip Man thing. So just for the audience, Ip Man never throws the first punch. He's not an aggressor. He will wait, not wait, but he does not want to fight. Almost, he did not mean to fight. But a lot of times, what happens is he's in the middle of conflict, and the aggressor or the enemy is the one who wants to challenge him or wants to see how he fights or wants to he is protecting someone who is weaker. And I really like the point where you said, oh, he takes the and the enemy punches him and he uses the enemy's force to counterattack most of the time. So I like that point where you called out the emotion. Like you said, hey, I feel that that is a very it's very brutal feedback. I feel that that is very harsh feedback. And in front of people, and it's in today, I think it works. You know, like calling out. And I wish I've done that in the past. I've been in meetings where they were a bit aggressive. I could have called it out. Hey, you know, I seem a bit aggressive here. Maybe we can take a step back, and you know, can you let me know what would you like to see? And I think the reason why that works is because in Asian communication, in it is not Asian, but in general negative communication, we try to make it about the person. This is the worst thing I've seen. You are incompetent. This is the worst thing I've seen. So it's not about the person. It is about the presentation. So let's shift the focus off the person and focus on how we can do better in the presentation instead. So I really love that point. While you were telling the story, I may imagine myself in the person's shoes. I think I will try that in the future as well, like calling out that emotion, and calling out that circumstance as well.
I have a file, a digital flyer where there's the wheel of emotions, where you can call out your emotions that I'm happy to share with you. And on the back there are some 100 self-care ideas that people can use to decrease their stress level and to give themselves self-love.
Thank you so much. I'll definitely put that in the show notes as well. So my next question is maybe thinking back to emotional awareness and especially working in Asian cultures, our biggest fear, our biggest fear is being called incompetent. I'm not sure if being known as incompetent. So how do you balance, you know, being you know, having that fear of being incompetent and you know being emotionally aware or sharing more about your emotional state? How do you advise someone to balance that?
So as a manager, I would advise to breathe in. If you are the incompetent person, or you have a team, somebody in the team feel that they are scared to be incompetent. So that means that they don't talk, they don't ask any questions, they are just here because they are scared. They are scared to do anything. This is the result of fear, right? You either fight, flight, or freeze. In Asian culture, we are
Freeze.
mostly freezing. Like, yes, because Confucianism and the respect that we have for elders, we need to freeze because that's better, right? Until the moment the time has passed and the uncomfortable moment passed. Okay, and so if you have, as a manager, you have a team member like that who is scared of being incompetent, then I would recommend to breathe in and to show compassion and care. So and trust also, creating that setting that's psychologically safe environment for people to express themselves and say, hey, I'm not going to judge you. We are just here to talk. There is nothing wrong. You might make a mistake in the future or tell silly stuff, but there is no stupid questions, and every question can be constructive. So let's build together, because I can't have a one-way communication with you. I need you as a member who is fully part of this team, and I need your contribution. Otherwise, what's the point of having you in the team, right? You need your we need this contribution. So setting the scene is always the best. And then also in your communication, non-verbal communication, body language is important. Looking people in the eyes, even though I know eye contact is kind of seen as a disrespectful gesture culturally, but eye contact is so important. It's like you connect with the soul of the person, and it's so insightful, and you're like, okay, unconsciously the person connects with you. The gestures have to be open and welcoming, and the body posture has to lean towards the other, so that you have a relaxed body, but you're like, okay, I'm fully present for you. And holding that space with silence and an open question of, what do you think? And you hold that silence for 1, 2, 5 minutes if it needs. And at some point, the answer will come up. That's it.
Amazing. You answered my question already about how to have emotional awareness as a leader. That is so powerful. You're very insightful indeed. So my next question is on emotional awareness is something that I like what you just shared just now. I reflected on my first manager. My first manager is the opposite of what you just said. He said something like, "Do not come to me if you have questions, but you don't have a solution." I'm like, "Yeah, then why do I come to you?" so, so it is the opposite of what you said. It was a very close relationship as well. So maybe this is one of my last questions for today. So a lot of my audience are from LinkedIn and are business leaders in Asia. So maybe can you give us a word of advice? How can they be better leaders? And besides creating that environment just now that you said, that's amazing. How can they be better leaders, especially working, like in Vietnam or in Malaysia, where we have a very, freezing working environment?
There is, I think it's also, so it's important to be emotionally aware, but also aware of the difference between generation. Now there's the generation Z that is functioning differently, and soon there will be the alpha generation that is coming in. The generation Z in general, from my observation and my experience, I think that they like an open environment. They like to have clear instructions, of course, but they don't like a strict leadership or management. They don't hesitate at all to quit a toxic environment, because the thing is that now they have access to all the knowledge in the world in terms of leadership and management. So they know how to say, okay, this is toxic and I don't want it to impact myself, so I'm gonna move on. So I definitely think that it's important to be aware of those gaps, to continue on working on your emotional intelligence in general. So emotional awareness is just one part of emotional intelligence, and I believe that it's a good start, but it's not the only steps to solve a conflict. or to solve a problem or to engage with a team or motivate them. It's important to work on all 4 pillars of emotional intelligence. So self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and social management. I do that with the PCM, with the process communication model, which is a scientifically validated tool to help you understand human interactions. And I give like the basic of the theory in my TEDx talk. But this is very important to work on because I believe that up until now, and I think this is something that you have observed also, is that all the leadership theories are all American or French or European in general, right? So it's more like from a Western mindset. And I believe that the Asian leadership style exists. It doesn't have to be strict. It doesn't have to be traditional. It can be compassionate, and it can really combine both, the best of both worlds, meaning the respect that we have, the importance of harmony, and also the empowerment of the uniqueness of each and every individual in Asia. But this has to come from leaders, business leaders, right? And because we don't have thought leaders who have written bestsellers, American bestsellers, so up until now, maybe someday it will come. But I truly believe that it's also on Asians to create their own leadership style.
Thank you so much, Denise. I hope one day you should be also writing your own books as well.
Indeed.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Today was a very insightful conversation. And yes, like you said, yeah, you are an expert in communications as well. In the future, I hope to have you back and talk about communication also. But thank you for answering all these questions today. And for the listeners, please follow Denise Truong and also the TYDE Consulting on LinkedIn and also many other platforms as well. Thank you so much, Denise, for coming on.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you for listening. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Thank you so much.